Now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the War Zone, the weekly acquisition report, the show where I, the Renegades, show you, the viewers, the latest additions to my ever-growing media library. And like I told you guys last week when we rebooted the show, it's not just going to be movies anymore. Movies are pretty much a dying breed, especially in my general area. I don't know about where you guys live. Best Buy completely did away with DVDs and Blu-rays, at least in store. Target and Walmart seem to have an aisle and a half at best of movies. Pawn shops have basically gotten rid of them as they just don't sell with streaming anymore. Thrift stores cutting back. Dollar Trees don't sell them anymore. So me coming up with DVD and Blu-rays to show you guys for my ever expanding movie library just seems to be a moot point. So again, like I explained last week, give you another explanation this week for those of you that may have missed it. Kind of branching out. I'm doing a lot of stuff that's media. Some weeks you'll see me talk about records like I'm going to do this week. Some weeks it'll be books. Maybe every now and again it'll be a show of CDs. You'll still get DVDs and Blu-rays as well, just not as frequent as it's harder for me to come up with those. But much like I did last week when we came back, rebooted the show, this week I'm going to do some more records. Now, all these records, I'm going to show you 10 different cuts. All of them I got off of eBay, or as I like to call it, Evil Bay. Why Evil Bay? Because once you get started down that road to Wonderland, it's hard to stop when it comes to eBay. It can become addicting. Thankfully, I've never really had an addictive personality, so I can always slam on the brakes when I need to, walk away, come back another time when money's a little bit better, pick it right back up. It's actually been a while since I dabbled in eBay, but ever since I brought my record player out of the mothballs, if you will, out of the storage closet, my daughter has a turntable now. I've been kind of boosting up my old vinyl collection. Once upon a time, I used to DJ back in college. I had the 2 turntables. I had crates of records, hip hop, R&B mostly, but then there was some of the other stuff. And I ended up selling all that stuff off. So I'm trying to rebuild what I consider a respectable vinyl collection. I've got almost 2 crates already, and I've just been thrift stores, pawn shops, yard sales, eBay. Wherever I can, I've been trying to come up with and find records, whether it's ones that I owned once upon a time and I'm restocking because I got rid of them at the point that I needed to, or they're ones that I've never owned, ones that are now in this resurgence of vinyl being released for a first time, adding all those to my collection. So again, I have 10 vinyls I'm going to show you. Some of them may surprise you that I'd be into this type of stuff. Some of them might not. You might look at some of them and be like, that says JJ right there. We'll see where we go with this. The first one may surprise you, and it's a Christmas album by Liberace. Liberace, pretty renowned piano player, the 50s, 60s, I believe even into the early 70s. I forget when he passed. Don't come at me. But it's a Christmas album for one, and y'all know how I feel about Christmas. And he, to my knowledge, from my remembrance, my recollection, he never was really a singer. He just played the piano. So it should all be pretty much instrumental. Christmas piano. You want to talk about something soothing, something relaxing? This, once I put it on come the holidays, should very much be my wheelhouse. And it's funny because I chuckle. I look at this cover here and I think about how the kids today talk about people with drip. Liberace had drip before drip was a thing. I'm just saying, look at that outfit. Look at that coat. But it's got his version of O Tannenbaum, O Christmas Tree, Oh Holy Night, What Child Is This? You've got Ave Maria. You've got a medley that has like Joy to the World and It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. So, yeah, kicking things off right there with some Liberace. Next one that we've got is a band that was part of the British invasion in the 60s. Didn't really catch on to the extent that the Beatles did or the Stones. They had a few hits, though, including the title track of this album, Herman's Hermits. There's a Kind of Hush. And I definitely know that song. Like I said, it's one of their big hits. But what intrigued me about this album is that's really the only recognizable track. But the track after it is a song called Saturday's Child, which I am very much familiar with. I've never heard Herman's Hermits version of it. The version that I am most familiar of comes to us from the Monkees. And I do believe, track 2, again, right after the theme from the Monkees, so right after the title track essentially of this album, is Saturday's Child. Just like after the title track on the Herman's Hermits album is Saturday's Child. The Monkees' debut album from the Prefab Four. They were supposed to be America's answer to the Beatles, zany sitcom in the style of A Hard Day's Night. I mean, this album right here, as well as the second album, which hopefully I'll get at some point, more of the Monkees. But this one is just banger after banger after banger, as Seamus would say. I mean, you've got the theme from the Monkees TV show. Everybody knows. Even if you're not a Monkees fan, you know. Here we come, walking down the street. You know it. Saturday's Child, which I just discussed. I Want to Be Free, beautifully sung by Davy Jones. Tomorrow's Gonna Be Another Day, kind of an underrated album track. Papa Jean's Blues, my daughter's favorite Monkee song. Take a Giant Step. That's just the first side. Then you go to the second side, and you've got The Last Train to Clarksville. And you've got some album tracks that honestly I don't really remember. I'm going to have to give this a spin and see if they refresh my memory, but this just doesn't seem to be my day. Let's Dance On. I'll Be True to You, Sweet Young Thing. And then it closes out with Gonna Buy Me a Dog, which I am vaguely familiar with. Debut album from the Monkees, though, classic. Had to add that to my collection. Next up is Quarter Flash, and they had the song Harden My Heart from the 80s. And I wanted to make sure I had that. I love that song. Only song of theirs that I know. So it's like, do you go and find the greatest hits? Do you just buy the album it came off of? Does it really matter? So I found the album that it came off of. Again, eBay, pretty inexpensive. But what I find funny about Quarter Flash, and I'm not talking about today, modern day 2025. I'm talking about back in the days when I was young, so wee lad. The lead singer for Quarter Flash, I always swore was Pat Benatar. It's not. But very distinct and similar sounding voices. And the reason I find that interesting is because the next two albums we're going to discuss are in fact Pat Benatar albums. We've got Crimes of Passion, which has You Better Run. It has Hit Me With Your Best Shot, tracks that she's very well known for. And then Get Nervous here has Shadows of the Night, another fantastic track that she's well known for. Two great albums by a phenomenal 80s female vocalist. The last one we're going to get into today from eBay is And it's one I've been searching for a minute. And thankfully, I was able to find one very reasonably priced. One of arguably the greatest singers of the 80s, possibly of all time. You want to talk about a distinct voice. Steve Perry has a distinct voice. And this is his solo debut album, Street Talk, which came out in the early to mid 80s. We're talking Oh Sherry, we're talking Foolish Heart, we're talking Strung Out. Great songs by the man who was the voice of Journey from the late 70s all the way to the mid 90s. Love, love, love this album. Steve Perry and Journey are one of those things that my mom heavily influenced me on, raised me on. She had John Denver, she had Journey, she had Barry Manilow. My dad had the Beatles, the Stones, that 60s, the Doors, the Who, the Beach Boys. That was my dad's influence. My mom was Journey, was John Denver, was Barry Manilow. And there were a few others in my youth. Of course, later in my life, she's the reason I listened to country. Steve Perry's Street Talk, I feel, is a must own if you're a fan of Journey. That covers the eBay stuff, the Evil Bay stuff. Now, there are a couple other albums I'm going to show you. These were all found at a yard sale. And when I tell you I stumbled into this, that's you can't get much more stumbled into these three than what I did. I was literally out one day doing Uber Eats, and there were a couple of young girls, the daughters of the people that were holding the yard sale, with signs kind of jumping up and down on the side of the road. And at first I saw this and I'm like, whoa, is something wrong? And I didn't realize they had a yard sale sign. It's like, okay, whatever. I'm in the middle of a delivery. Make my delivery, come back, and I went ahead and I stopped. Because again, I'm looking for records. And I asked them, do you guys have any records? And they showed me a box over in the corner. So I started flipping through them. And I found 3 different records that caught my eye. So I asked how much they were. Y'all, these records were $0.25 a piece. The cheapest records I have ever found. They were in great condition. And I just couldn't pass them up. It almost made me consider going back and buying the box and just seeing if I could flip and resell the ones that I didn't care about. But I was like, no, these are a steal. Let me leave these for somebody else that actually is going to want them. Let me just take what I want. First one that I grabbed, Hank Williams' Greatest Hits. Now, this is the country music that most people make fun of. This is that twiny southern drawl. Country music has evolved so much since this point that people either love this type of country and hate on the modern stuff, or they love the modern stuff and they hate on this. I don't like all the classic stuff. I'm going to be honest with you guys. There's some of it I just can't get into. But there's something about Hank Williams, and I mean, I'm so lonesome I could cry. Your cheating heart. Hey, good looking. These are just iconic old school country songs. Jambalaya. How can you pass up on that for $0.25? Then I found Herb Albert's Tijuana Brass. Wow, okay, that's kind of trippy the way that's happening. Herb Albert's Tijuana Brass, Whipped Cream and Other Delights is the name of the album. And this is just one of those iconic album covers. I think almost everybody has seen this album cover at some point in their life. And then you've got his version of Love Potion number 9. You've got his version of A Taste of Honey, which, while not a Beatles original, I know because of the Beatles, so I get to hear his version of that. Again, a quarter. How do you go wrong with that? But the coup de grace, if you will, the album that just made me go, huh? But at the same time go, I have to have this. I have to hear this. And it's definitely a JJ record. Santa's Own Christmas. Yes, you heard that right. Santa's Own Christmas. Santa himself comes to your house with his own stories and songs of Santa Claus and Christmas. Get a load of this. Here's your own Christmas visit from Santa. As you listen to this special album by Santa Claus, you'll discover just how very special he is. Santa is here himself telling you his own Christmas stories, singing you his favorite holiday songs, and he asks you to join him, answering those questions that you've always wondered about the North Pole, his reindeer, and elves. With Dancer along to help out, Mrs. Claus was too busy in the toy shop. Santa even shows you how to make him happy this Christmas. Now, before you begin your own visit from Santa, here's a special greeting from Santa Claus himself. Quote, Merry Christmas, boys and girls. Mrs. Claus, Dasher, and all your friends at the North Pole, join me in wishing you the jolliest Christmas ever. May all your days be filled with happiness and love. Santa Claus. So it's got stories, then it's got songs like Jingle Bells, Up on the Housetop, Jolly Old St. Nicholas. Again, could you find a more perfect JJ record? As much as I love Christmas. So there it is. That is this week's haul from the War Zone, the weekly acquisition report, the show that shows you, the viewers, the latest additions to my ever-growing media library. What do you think of this haul? What do you think of some of these records? Are you a fan of Pat Benatar? Did you ever think that the lead singer of Quarterflash sounded like Pat Benatar? You a fan of Steve Perry? What about Hank Williams? What about Herman's Hermits or the Monkees? Talk to me. Let's have a conversation in the comment box below. What about Liberace and Santa's Own Christmas? Have you heard these before? Do you know anything about them? Because I'm not even going to get to hear them until I spin them for the holidays. But share your thoughts with me, your memories of some of these albums in the comment below. And until next week, when we will once again step into the War Zone, I am the Renegade JJ Williams, thanking y'all for joining me. I will see you guys next week.